The contact return appeared on my scope at ERO 411. Ship's time. A formation of 6 sorvathi, intercept frigates, dropping out of transit fold 7. 100 kilometers off the freighter's bow. I marked them, tagged the range, and said nothing. The captain already knew. She'd been standing behind my station for 11 minutes. "They're hailing the Dunmore's gate," I said. "Of course they are." Captain Ness rested one hand on the back of my chair. Not gripping, just resting. "Log it open." I piped the hail through my secondary speaker, low volume. The Sorvathi dutycasters spoke in that flat, layered register their warrior caste uses for intercept protocols. 2 voices overlapping, one slightly behind the other, as if the language itself was designed to unsettle whoever received it. The message was standard frontier interdiction. Identify, heave to, accept boarding, or be classified as a hostile transit. The Dunmore's Gate's master, a man named Orvin Carrick, whom I'd spoken to exactly once across an encrypted relay 4 days ago, answered without hesitation. His voice was steady. He'd been briefed. Dunmore's Gate, independent registry, carrying survey equipment and compressed feedstock. We heave to and accept boarding under protest per Article 9 of the Compact Transit Accord. Clean, calm. Was real. We'd confirmed it with the diplomatic attaché at Farpoint before this run. Carrick knew it gave the Sorvathi legal cover to board, and also legally obligated them to log the encounter. He was making a record. That was the point. On my scope, the 6 frigates distributed into a boarding formation. 2 forward, 2 flanking, 2 holding wide. Textbook. Their escort destroyer, a big blunt thing they called a threshold class, moved to cover the rear quadrant. I watched it settle into position and thought, they're good. Organized, confident. They had no idea what they were confident about. "Boarding craft away from lead frigate," I said. "Time to hull contact?" I ran the intercept numbers. 14 minutes. "Thank you, Marsh." Captain Ness straightened. "All stations. Prepare to decloak." There was no drama in the way she said it. That was the thing about Ness. She'd been running escort doctrine for 9 years, and in 9 years the only tone she'd ever used was the same one you'd use to ask someone to pass the salt. The crew responded the same way, quietly, efficiently. No one said anything that would be embarrassing to remember afterward. I pulled my console to full tactical display and started the decloak sequence, alongside the engineer. The Harrowgate's stealth system wasn't a single switch. It was a coordinated collapse of 17 overlapping field projectors. And if you rushed it, you got a partial silhouette bloom that read on passive sensors as a debris fragment. We didn't rush it. We never rushed it. At 0424, 30 seconds before the Sorvathi boarding craft reached the Dunmore's Gate's aft docking collar, Captain Ness said, "Execute." I watched my scope as the Harrowgate resolved. I've been asked afterward what that looks like from the inside. The honest answer is that it doesn't look like anything from the inside. You feel the field drop in your back teeth. A faint pressure change, like the ship, exhaling, and then the passive masking is gone, and you're broadcasting your full emissions profile to everything in the system. What I saw on my scope was our own return coming up, which is just numbers and a shape outline I already knew by heart. What I did not see, and what I was very aware of not seeing, was the Sorvathi perspective. But I could infer it from their response. The lead frigate's hailing frequency spiked on my board 4 seconds after we decloaked. Not a standard hail cadence, a burst transmission, the kind that happens when an operator hits the key before they've finished composing the message. 2 seconds after that, the boarding craft decelerated. Hard. I had to recalculate its intercept projection twice because the first result came back as a course reversal, and I assumed I'd made an error. I hadn't made an error. "Boarding craft is returning to frigate," I said. No one on the bridge made a sound. The Sorvathi Threshold class destroyer, the big, confident one that had settled so neatly into its rear cover position, lit its maneuvering drives. Not battle maneuver. The kind of drive you associate with a ship that has just realized it is not where it thought it was relative to a threat, and is correcting, carefully, without any sudden movements. I watched it for a moment, and felt something I didn't have a clean word for. Not satisfaction, exactly. Not pride. Something quieter. The recognition that 9 years of doctrine and 2,000 hours on this specific sensor console had just paid for itself in a way that would never appear in any official accounting. We're being hailed, I said. Compact frequency. Warrior caste protocol. Senior command register. I paused. That's the formation commander, Captain. Put it through. The Sorvathi commander's voice was different from the duty caster's. Older. The layered double register was there, but slower. More deliberate. The cadence of someone choosing each word the way you'd choose each step crossing ice you weren't sure about. The translation matrix rendered it in flat standard. But even through the flattening, I could hear the shape of the question underneath. The message, in full, was unidentified vessel. You were not on our approach survey. Identify class, registry, and intent. Captain Ness looked at me. I had the response already drafted. She'd given me the language 2 days ago, and I'd trimmed it down to the precise minimum. She read it off my screen, said, "Send it," and I sent it. The message was 11 words. Terran escort carrier Harrogate. Convoy protection. Freighter is ours. I watched the gap on the tactical display. The Sorvathi formation had gone still. 6 frigates, 1 destroyer. All of them sitting on their drives, not moving, not talking. The kind of stillness that on a human ship would mean every person in the room had just had the same thought at the same moment and no one was ready to say it out loud. 41 seconds passed. Threshold-class destroyer lit its main drives. Not toward us. The vector was a clean departure line, the kind of heading you file when you want the nav record to show a scheduled transit rather than a retreat. The 6 frigates redistributed into a departure formation behind it. The boarding craft, back in its dock bay by now, cycling down its approach systems. No one fired anything. That mattered. That was the whole architecture of the doctrine. You show them what's there, you give them the way out, and you let them take it. The Sorvathi Compact had a warrior caste that ran on calculus more than pride, and the calculus here was straightforward. They had boarded a freighter that turned out to be escorted by a cloaked military carrier they had not detected with their current sensor suite, and had no tactical response to. The boarding party had been 30 seconds from the hull. 30 seconds. The senior commander hailed once more before his formation completed its departure run. I logged it personally because I wanted the exact wording on record. Terran escort carrier Harrogate. This encounter will be filed as unclassified transit contact. No hostile act was committed by either party. Captain Ness nodded at me. Keyed the response. Agreed. Safe transit, Commander. And they were gone. The last return faded off my scope at Arrow 451, 40 minutes after the initial intercept, and the Dunmore's Gates master came back up on the relay to ask if he could resume course for the survey. Station, I told him yes, apologized for the delay, and logged the contact closed. Afterward, when the captain had gone to write her incident report, and the bridge had settled back into the low hum of a routine transit leg, I sat at my console and thought about what the Sorvathi commander had said. Unclassified transit contact. It was a bureaucratic formula, a way of filing an encounter that didn't fit any existing category without having to create a new one, or admit to the warrior caste command structure. Your frontier T interdiction doctrine had just encountered a variable it had no answer for. What he hadn't said, and what I suspected he was still working out, was this. If the Harrogate had been there, invisible, for the full 4-day approach, and she had been, then how many other freighters in compact frontier space had something like her riding alongside them? How many of those routine interdictions, those confident boarding formations, those textbook intercept geometries, had unfolded inside the sensor shadow of something that simply chose not to announce itself? I didn't know the answer to that. It wasn't my clearance level, but I knew what the Sorvathi commander's sensor log showed when he reviewed it later. It showed a debris field, a gas giant's ring scatter, and a transit corridor that looked exactly like every other transit corridor in that sector. Right up until it didn't. That was the thing they were going to have to write into their doctrine. And it was going to take them a long time to figure out how to write it, because the thing they'd learned wasn't a tactic you could counter. It was a philosophy. We don't send merchants into frontier space alone. We never have. The carrier is always there. You just don't know you're looking at it. I filed my sensor log, shut down my tertiary display, poured the last of the coffee from the carafe on the console edge. It was cold. That was fine. Some lessons cost more than cold coffee. The Sorvathi had gotten off easy.